In this image, we can see all the circus members in different outfits, and we can recognize some of them from the previous teasers, like Jax in his safari outfit, Ragatha is wearing a cap, so it seems like her choice of adventure is definitely gonna be the softball one. Kinger is wearing a trench coat and a hat, resembling the Mafia teaser image, and Pomni is in a suit, so indeed, the office teaser was probably her choice. But we can also finally see more of Gangle and Zooble, and Gangle is wearing a dress, or maybe a nightgown, I'm not sure. And also Zooble, what is their outfit? I can't even make it out, so if you're smarter than me and you can see what they could be wearing, let me know in the comments. But we can also see Corn, which is probably a nod to the corn joke about Jax, which Gooseworks talked about on her Tumblr. And we can also see a baby's head, like what is even going on? And Kane is in the middle of the image, and it looks like he's breaking through a paper wall, which might as well mean that he's indeed glitching. And that is why we are seeing this many locations and different adventures. And honestly, after all these teasers and weird updates and out of context lines, I feel like I need to just sit down and go over everything we've seen so far, because at this point it's getting impossible to keep track of what's actually happening and what's just glitch messing with us for fun. And yeah, I know I say this every time, but this episode actually might be the most unhinged one so far, just not in the way we originally thought. So the first teaser we got was the safari one. Jax in a little explorer hat, holding a gun, looking way too pleased with himself for someone who absolutely should not have access to weapons. That one threw everyone off immediately because we were still expecting the Colosseum episode at the time, like the one from the trailer from last year. And instead it looked like we are going on a safari hunting trip, which is already wild, but what made it even more confusing was the caption. Something about endangered species and Jax being in the middle of it with a gun. Anyway, then they dropped the office teaser, and I don't even know what to say about this one because it straight up looks like a workplace sitcom. It looks like Pomni is back in the room from episode 1, typing on a computer. Ragatha is holding a pile of papers and for some reason wearing sunglasses indoors like she's hungover. Kinger is doing Kinger things and Jax is just lurking with a piece of paper like he's applying for a job. I don't know, it looks like an episode of The Office got modded into the circus for no reason. And again, the caption on the Wacky site makes it sound like a joke. Something about Jax eating Ragatha's lunch, Zooble skipping their coffee, and Kinger summoning a paper demon from hell, which maybe would explain why Ragatha has the glasses. But next the stadium teaser showed up, which is this big softball setup, mannequins in the stands, the whole group just kind of standing there on the field, looking like they got pulled into a sports episode halfway through a different plot. But then the Mafia teaser also came out, and if you haven't seen it, I don't even know how to describe this one, because it's just Ragatha dressed like she owns a nightclub and Jax with a cigar, fully leaning into his villain arc, like he's 10 minutes away from ordering someone to be thrown in a river. Zooble is missing, like maybe they got fed up with the adventures changing this frequently, which makes perfect sense this time. And the text on the wackywash.com literally said, Pomni's mob life is in deep trouble, like since when does Pomni have a mob life? And just when it felt like it couldn't get any more disconnected, it somehow started to make more sense. Because if you think about it, Kane didn't come up with the last adventure after all. He let the group use the suggestion box, so what if this time he tries to combine all of their ideas at once? Or maybe he tries to go through them one at a time but gives up halfway and just throws the rest in for a good measure. And what we end up with is this rapid fire mess of scenes and settings and outfits where no one really knows what's going on and the characters are just trying to survive while the tone keeps switching every 5 minutes. But there's also a theory that maybe it's not Kane who's pushing all this. Maybe it's Ragatha, because Gooseworks shared that she's gonna be really important in this episode and we've seen her slowly unraveling over the last few adventures. Because she's always been the one trying to keep the group together, making sure everyone's okay, being helpful, being nice, so playing the part, but she's clearly getting tired of it. And when she got the stupid sauce into her eye in episode 4 and started saying what she really thought, it wasn't just played for laughs, it actually kind of felt like a warning. Like this version of Ragatha has always been there, just under the surface, and now she's letting more and more of it out. And then we got that line from Ragatha, the one Gooseworks said she says in episode 5, not anymore. And honestly, that line alone makes me think that this is the moment where she stops trying. Like she's done keeping the peace. Maybe she's the one who keeps changing the adventure every time someone starts getting getting annoyed or uncomfortable, not because she wants to mess things up, but because she's still trying to make everyone happy and it's just not working. And maybe that's what finally breaks her. Because if this whole thing is Ragatha trying to hold everyone together by force and nobody's reacting the way she needs them to, then yeah, I could see her snapping. And this might actually be what Gooseworks meant when she joked about people getting attached to her evil version. Because if we start seeing that side of Ragatha come out here, even just a little, it's probably not gonna be her going full villain or anything, but more like she stops holding back. She stops the sugarcoating. And maybe she'll finally say exactly what she thinks, and it might not be nice or helpful or even fair, but at least it's gonna be real. And if that's where we're heading, then yeah, that could totally change the way everyone sees her, including Jax. And this would all explain the whole Ragatha and Jax share the next 2 episodes thing. Maybe this is where she stops putting up with Jax's behavior. And if she does and she finally tells him off or throws it back at him, that might actually mess Jax up way more than anything else. Especially because Gooseworks said that he's gonna get tortured, but not in a traditional way, which kind of makes me think someone is finally gonna say something that gets to him. And yeah, she also said that Jax is going to do something really bad. We don't know what that is yet, but it's clearly not gonna be great. And the other out of context line we got was from Pomni, "I am just being here," which might be the most Pomni thing ever, but it also kind of feels different this time. She sounds kinda tired, and not in a dramatic way, just in that checked out, mentally flatline kind of way where everything is too much and you're just waiting for it to end. And I get it. If I was stuck in a sports mafia office safari crossover episode while 2 of the most emotionally damaged people in the circus work through their issues in real time, I would also be standing off of the side trying to dissociate. But obviously it's kinda hard to tell all this from an out of context written line, but still. And then there's also this mannequin NPC character in the teaser who might be Dr. Football, which would be kind of hilarious because he's just been vibing in the background since episode 1. But now he's right there in the middle of the group wearing a hat, looking like he belongs there. And some people think he's leading the safari adventure, or maybe even tied to something bigger, like maybe the circus is gonna start breaking apart, or the NPCs are becoming more sentient, or Kane isn't in control anymore. I don't know, but something about him feels intentional from the start, like he's not just an extra NPC. After all, he's got a name. And that also ties into the "was that a reference to something" line that Gooseworks shared, which sounds kinda serious, but could also be one of the characters actually noticing that something is off. Because if the NPCs are getting reused, if the logic is breaking down, if the simulation is glitching in a way they're not used to, that could be the first time someone actually starts realizing how fake it all is. And there's also the whole C&A mystery. Their logo's been showing up more often on boxes in Kane's office, and we still don't know who or what they are. Maybe they are the ones running the circus. Maybe they created Kane. Maybe they are monitoring everything, and if Kane is developing real emotions, which it kinda looks like he is, then maybe that's the problem. Maybe he's starting to care too much about the others, and the system sees that as a threat. Maybe he's glitching because he's not allowed to feel anything at all. Or maybe he was never just a program to begin with, and something else is going on entirely. So yeah, I don't know how this episode is gonna play out, but I do think it's gonna start out feeling like a joke and end with something way more serious. Maybe not full meltdown, but definitely the start of something breaking. And whether it's Kane or Ragatha or Jax or the whole system, it kind of feels like everything is starting to come apart. We can finally be sure that the circus members are indeed going on all the adventures that have been teased in this past week, so we will see them at the softball stadium, in the bar, the savannah, and what looks like a presidential office of some sort. And since every character seems to appear at every single location, it kinda seems like Kane is glitching and multiple locations got picked out for the adventures, but I don't think that these are random. And instead I believe that each location and each adventure represent a version of the circus members that they could have become. And I know it sounds kinda insane, but hear me out. At first we can see this shot of what seems to be Kinger in the softball stadium, which might be the first location they go to. If it makes sense, because the stadium was already kinda teased in the trailer video from last year, so maybe that is where they are gonna start out. And what's interesting about this location is that we can see that the circus members will have to play softball against themselves. But these characters look slightly off, and I immediately thought of Gooseworks' tweet where she talked about evil Ragatha. So what I'm thinking is happening here is that the circus members will have to play either against their complete opposites, or what's an even more interesting theory is that they will have to play against their old selves. Because if you look at the odd versions, it looks like Zooble is sort of calm and not their usual like feisty self. And then Pomni, she looks like she's ready to fight. And the same goes for Ragatha. She has that evil look on her face, her bottom eye even turned red, so yeah, she's kinda scary. But Jax looks like a shy little boy and not like his usual smug self. And Kinger, well, he also looks kinda angry, or someone that I'd call like an authority figure, which would also make sense for him. But what's also interesting, that instead of Gangle, we can see a pink version of Orbsman. And I don't know about you guys, but what came to my mind was this.
I know you guys love your NPCs, but if I start losing track of who's a human and who's an NPC, who knows what could happen?
And if you think back to the Gangle episode, so episode 4, that is when we first saw Orbsman as well, so maybe these two have some kind of history. Like, what if it's actually Orbsman who used to be a circus member and it was instead Gangle who was an NPC before, but somehow they got switched and now they have to live with the consequences. I know this theory is kinda insane, but maybe this is true, and if it is, then it would make sense that the circus members would get not only shaken up a bit, but straight up going insane. Like, just think about it. If you would meet a past version of yourself that you finally outgrow, or maybe just a different version of yourself that you don't feel connected to, that would be insane. But they are not stopping here. Kane will most likely throw them into a completely different adventure, maybe the safari one, which at first look, it seems like that it's gonna be in Jax's favor, cause here he again seems his confident self. He will probably be thriving during this scene. He has a gun and all, but after this one, it looks like they are going to be switching to the office themed adventure, and here we can also see that the two adventures are kinda overlapping, because Jax is here in what seems to be Pomni's office in his safari outfit, so maybe at this point Kane will be glitching so hard that there won't be clear distinctions between the adventures. But despite how he saw Pomni in the teaser image in the office, which looked like the office from the circus, now it seems like she is like a president or something. And what if this is what Pomni could have become if she never decided to enter the amazing digital circus video game? And now Kane is showing it to her and the others, and as for why, well, I could think of two reasons. The first one being just malfunction, like truly Kane is breaking down and maybe he never supposed to be showing these to the circus members, but now because he has some issues he can't control himself, and that is why we keep seeing everybody in these different roles. But the second option is that maybe Kane believes that by showing the circus members these outcomes of their lives, maybe they could become more appreciative towards their circus lives, because as we know, they have been kinda tired in these past few episodes, and Zooble talked to Kane about how nobody enjoys the adventures, and now Kane is like, oh yeah? Then watch this. And I believe this could be a reasonable theory, and maybe Kane is not driven by revenge or anything like that. Maybe he just truly believes that by showing how maybe Ragatha would have turned out to be truly evil if she would still be a human, or maybe Gangle wouldn't even exist if she was just an NPC, that would make them more happy that they got this opportunity to be in the circus. But in Pomni's case, if she really could have become the president, then this is gonna mess with her bad. But what I also wanted to point out is how we can see Zooble. At the bar, which is from the Mafia teaser, we can actually see them as a bartender. And if you remember back, Gooseworks had a Tumblr answer where she literally wrote that Zooble would be the best bartender out of the characters, so maybe that is what they would have turned out to be as a human. And yeah, it would make sense, but then what is this? It kinda looks like this is the void where Zooble is with Kane and Bubble and we can't see anybody else, so I don't know, it makes me think that the tension between Zooble and Kane is only gonna be growing these next episodes, and maybe here we can see the aftermath of Zooble crashing out again, and maybe they could also be fed up with the revealing adventures, and maybe that is why Kane just gets them out of there and just transfers them into the void. Because Kane seemed extremely frustrated with Zooble in episode 4, so it would make sense that this time, while he's also already glitching and has issues, and then if Zooble also just adds to it, then he will just break and remove Zooble from the group, since he's literally incapable of creating adventures that Zooble would enjoy. And then who knows what could happen here? Maybe Kane could just leave Zooble here so that they don't have to participate in the adventures anymore, but this would be even more cruel if you ask me. But the truth is, based on the trailer, I can't really make out a timeline, like how each adventure is gonna follow the previous one, but there's also this scene which kinda seems like it's in the savannah, but it's dark. Maybe it's not even the savannah, cause Jax isn't wearing his cute explorer outfit, outfit, but this scene definitely looks like one after the characters have been through a lot, because we can see Pomni there with Jax and Ragatha, so I'm guessing here is when we're finally gonna see the heart-to-heart we have been waiting for, just like how there was one between Pomni and Gummigoo, Kinger, and then Gangle in episode 4. Now as for how Pomni could deal with both Jax and Ragatha, and also how those two are gonna react to each other, well, we cannot be sure, but judging from these scenes, it feels like they're all gonna be confused and probably the conversation isn't gonna be that friendly. But as for how they're gonna get separated from the others, I'm not sure. Maybe it's possible that these three have some kind of history with each other, but since they can't remember their names, they just can't piece the things together, so maybe something is gonna get revealed here. And another scene which I'm sure is gonna be interesting, and what seems like Ragatha is opening up to the others, is this one, where we can see all the circus members staring at the camera, so I can only guess that Ragatha is sitting there, and maybe after the adventures and after her evil side came out, she's gonna explain why she acted the way she did, and then we could also finally understand her better. But the adventure is switching because of Kane's glitching, and maybe they are revealing more about the characters' human lives is definitely possible, and I can't wait to see if this is gonna be the case, because what I'm expecting is a sort of silly episode but still packed with some serious drama and existential chaos, so it would fit perfectly. The trailer definitely has some pretty interesting stuff in it, but one thing that keeps bugging me is what if the characters are actually not even choosing these different adventures themselves, but instead they got stuck in a loop where they just can't complete an adventure, so they are just getting yeeted into the next one, but nope, they can't complete that one either, and so it keeps repeating, who knows for how long, because it also doesn't seem like Kane would be able to help them. Moreover, it seems like he is the reason for the circus members being stuck in a loop. But there were two frames in the trailer that really got me thinking, and the first one is this one, where we can see the first female president, Pomni, having to disarm a bomb. And what if Pomni is not gonna succeed, and so the whole White House and all the circus members and NPCs or whoever is in there is gonna blow up, and so that is when the adventure resets, but just in a different location. That would also explain why this happened in the trailer. It looks like the characters are coming back from an adventure through the usual portal, but we can see that they are glitching, and it doesn't even seem like they can fully come back. So what if all this means that the adventures just keep looping until, like, I don't know what happens. But this would definitely make sense, because I think at this point it's safe to say that Kane is definitely glitching, and that is causing trouble.
That'd be...
Like, look at the scenes with Kane in the trailer. These are crazy. I can't even predict what is gonna go down with him. But yeah, my guess is the circus members' day will start off as usual, where they gather in the circus, and then Kane, learning from the past days' events, will probably ask the circus members for adventure suggestions. So they come up with different topics, and then they throw it into the suggestion box, and maybe then Kane will choose one adventure and send the gang off. And it sounds normal, nothing out of the ordinary, but maybe things will start to be suspicious, where the circus members arrive to the first destination, complete the adventure, and then nothing happens. There are no banners or fireworks, like they completed the adventure, but instead they get teleported to a new location with a different challenge. And it does look like that maybe with the other adventures they don't even get close to finishing those, cause Kane's corruption is only getting worse. So maybe that is when we'll see the adventures overlapping, and then maybe this is also why we'll see Zooble in this separate location with Kane and Bubble, which kinda looks like the void, or at least there's literally nothing here, so I don't know. But yeah, Kane is definitely corrupted, or the other possibility is that it's not even him, but the ones that are above him, or maybe those controlling him. And yeah, I'm thinking about CNA, but honestly, based on the trailer video, I don't really think that this is the episode we're gonna learn more about them. Maybe this will only set the scene for further exploration about the topic, and what's really going on with Kane, but it's not really gonna get explained here, because why else would he literally start out the trailer like this?
Oh, thank God you're here! I forgot to make a trailer for the next episode of the amazing digital circus! I need you to handle this one for me, buddy!
And it also kinda makes me think that maybe Bubble could be Kane's replacement? I don't know, but he also acted way more strangely than before, so who knows what is really going on. But we also have to talk about what the never-ending adventures could mean for the circus members, cause oh boy, I think we're not ready for what's coming. For example, there is Zooble, and we are well aware that Zooble doesn't enjoy adventures, and if they have a chance to just not go, they won't go.
Where's Zooble?
I made this adventure really cool and mature, just for them.
Now, since we can see them in the different locations, it does seem like they are joining the first adventure, but since the adventures just don't stop, well, they are keep respawning into each location. So we can imagine how fed up Zooble will be when they realize what's happening. But looking at the others, they also seem pretty annoyed and confused, probably because of jumping from one adventure to the other, hoping to finally finish one, but nope, they are now in a bar and then Pomni has to be the president of the United States, and if that wasn't enough, they will meet their own evil copies. So yeah, it also seems like the adventures are progressively getting worse with each respawn. And by the way, is it just me, or do these adventures look kind of too real or maybe too humane compared to the previous ones? It kinda looks like the circus members are back in real life and they got the locations from there, but obviously they still have their avatars, so maybe this is Kane's attempt at creating insanely immersive adventures that completely resemble the real life. And the concept for me as a viewer is really exciting, but this could mess with the circus members' head, and it looks like it definitely will mess with their heads. But this scene between Jax and Ragatha, and as I can see Pomni is also there, is probably gonna be the most interesting one, because judging by their expressions and body language, it looks like here is where Ragatha is either gonna say something mean to Jax or stand up to him or something like that, because we can see that it takes Jax off guard, and then he also grows kinda mad. And if you ask me, the looping adventures could definitely be the reason for the growing tension, especially with these two, where we actually know that the tension was already pretty high between them, so maybe this is where it's finally gonna come out.
Why do you always gotta do this?
What? I just said it was an accident.
Unbelievable! You are unbelievable!
And I'm thinking that Pomni is probably gonna be a sort of mediator between them, but Ragatha and Jax will probably not hold back, and I'm expecting a pretty serious fight between them. Because if you remember back to the out of context lines Gooseworks shared, where Ragatha is gonna say not anymore, and Jax will say I want you dead. Now these are pretty serious things to say, and obviously I'm only guessing that these are gonna be said out loud in the same conversation and context, because if it makes sense, especially seeing this scene. And one more interesting thing is that it kinda looks like this scene is gonna happen on the ground, which we saw in episode 1 when Kane gave Pomni a tour around the circus, so maybe it's possible that one of the locations they have to go to is there, which would be pretty exciting, especially at night. And it looks like this is gonna be one of the last adventures, and even if Jax and Ragatha won't fight, I'm pretty sure that this is gonna be the scene where they finally open up a bit and talk about their feelings more honestly. But to be honest, I do feel like it's not gonna be that peaceful. And Gooseworks also said that she's apologizing to the Bunny Doll shippers in advance, so something bad will definitely happen between those two, and that would make sense, because as we also know, episode 6 is gonna be even more crazy than this episode, and not in a good sense. And either it's about Kane fully losing control, or the circus members growing more tired and angry, or maybe it's specifically Ragatha and Jax who are gonna have issues in the next episode. We'll have to wait and see, but my guess is all of the above, and that even though episode 5 is supposedly the silly episode, I don't think it's gonna be harmless. Like if the characters are really in a loop and they can't seem to snap out of it, or more like it's Kane who can do his job properly. Well, I think this is a pretty bad situation on its own, and it's definitely gonna have its effect on the group. And we can see that the characters indeed look tired and basically hopeless, especially Jax and Pomni in this bar scene, which it looks like they've had a rough day and asked for a whiskey or something. But yeah, based on how we see Jax and Pomni in this trailer, where they have many shared scenes, I'm thinking that maybe Jax is gonna try to talk to Pomni in this episode, because we already kinda saw how he tried in episode 4 as well, and it seems like now they will also have the opportunity to bond over their situation. And it makes sense why Jax is drawn to Pomni, because she's the newest member who knows the least about Jax, and maybe he thinks that he still has a good shot with Pomni, and maybe this would also be an important factor in this scene, where it looks like he's gonna have a fight with Ragatha. But yeah, there's a lot to unpack, and these are just theories, but honestly, I think they make sense, and I can't wait to finally see how wrong I was about them, and maybe the whole episode is actually gonna be unserious and nothing major will happen. Please just share this teaser of Jax where we can see him in the savannah and he's pointing the gun directly into the camera. Now as for who is that he's actually pointing the gun at, we can only guess, and based on the teaser image that is on the wackywash.com, we could guess that it might be Gangle. And I think it would make perfect sense, because in episode 4, Gangle kinda punished him for not doing the things she asked him to do by sending him to training, and then Jax also always loved messing with Gangle, even outside of that. So I think it's possible that Jax and Gangle could go to the safari adventure, and then episode 2's events could happen again, where he already pointed a gun at Gangle so that he could manipulate her. But the wackywash.com also updated, and now there's a teaser of Kane with some Morse code, and his message is really interesting. If you translate the message, it literally says SOS CQD, I am losing my mind, also hi. And CQD used to be a distress signal for ships in distress, and it was later replaced by SOS. So yeah, another proof that Kane is definitely gonna lose it in episode 5, and the glitches and him being sort of angry at the circus members before was foreshadowing of him getting slowly corrupted. So in my opinion, we can be sure that the constant adventure and location switches are gonna be the result of Kane glitching. And this teaser also supports this claim, because in the previous episode the portal worked just fine, and it didn't just lure pop the circus members like this before. And the circus members also look confused, and maybe they didn't want to go on the adventure this time. Not only Zooble, but none of them, and that is why Kane had to teleport them to the location by force. But this again shows that Kane's idea of entertaining the circus members is absolutely two-dimensional, and his programming only goes as far as adventures equal entertainment. And he doesn't look concerned that the circus members are being forced to go on the adventure, so I think he's only getting more and more cruel, and obviously not on purpose, but the gap between him and the characters keep deepening, and that is why he hurts them more by not being understanding and assertive. Now of course he's an AI, so I'm not sure how much we can expect from him, but one thing's for sure, after this episode the circus members are gonna be so pissed at Kane, like dude did a lot of stupid things, but these never-ending adventures are gonna for sure make the circus members angrier than ever. Which brings me to the whole thing with those weird alternate versions of the characters in the stadium scene. So instead of just calling them evil versions or like past selves or something, there's actually this theory that makes way more sense, and it's that these aren't just random versions of the characters, they are what happens when their ego and identity get flipped. So like all the parts of themselves they normally try to hide or control, and everything they use to protect themselves kind of gets stripped away. So basically like the raw version of who they already are underneath everything. Like with Jax, we know he acts like he doesn't care and he's just there to mess with people and be smug and unreadable, but if his anti-version really is the opposite of that, then we are probably gonna see all the insecurity and anxiety that he's been suppressing the whole time. And that's why he looked so timid in that quick shot, like he couldn't even meet anyone's eyes. It's probably not just a personality swap, but more like the stuff he's scared of showing, and now he has no choice but to look at it during normal circumstances. And Ragatha, yeah, the version of her in the teaser is kinda scary. The red button eye and her facial expression, it doesn't really feel like a villain arc, but instead like repressed rage finally slipping out after being bottled up for who knows how long. Because Ragatha always acts so sweet and supportive, but we've seen her cracks. We've seen her jealous, we've seen her snap for half a second and then pushing back down. So if her flipped version is just her with all the resentment and frustration pushed to the surface, then this episode might be the one where she finally breaks a little. But what's even more interesting is that there's no anti-Gangle, at least not in the scenes we've seen so far. And maybe that's not an accident. Maybe it's because Gangle doesn't need a flipped version, because we already see both sides of her all the time. She's already got the comedy mask and the tragedy mask, literally, and she switches between them depending on how she's feeling. She doesn't fake being happy like Ragatha or hide behind jokes like Jax. And that might mean that she's the only one who doesn't have something buried deep that's gonna erupt when things get too real. So yeah, if that's what's going on, then this whole stadium thing isn't just a fun what-if adventure. It's like a psychological breakdown disguised as a softball game. And if they really have to fight or interact with these versions of themselves, it's gonna mess with them in a way they can't just reset from. Especially if they can't tell where the line is anymore between who they are and who they are afraid of being. And the thing is, it doesn't even stop with the softball stadium. That might be the first place they land, but based on the trailer, they're gonna get tossed around like ragdolls through at least 3 or 4 more locations, and each one just gets more messed up than the last. Which is already weird, because usually there's just one themed adventure per episode, and now suddenly we're switching from a sports field to a safari, to a bar, to a presidential office, and maybe even back to the circus grounds. Like yeah, this isn't really normal. Kane is most likely spiraling and dragging everyone down with him. But the safari one definitely looks like it's supposed to be Jax's domain. He's got that explorer outfit and the little gun, and he looks like he's actually enjoying himself, which is a red flag in itself, but it doesn't last, because then we see him again in the office scene. So that's probably when the glitching starts to get out of hand. Like the boundaries between each adventure are just collapsing and everything's bleeding into everything else. And none of it makes sense anymore, and Kane is in the doing anything to stop it, or maybe he can't. And I also can't stop thinking about that shot of Pomni at the desk in the presidential office where she's disarming a bomb. Like, why? Why is Pomni, who's been hanging on by a thread since episode 1, suddenly the president and in charge of keeping the circus from literally blowing up? If these adventures are meant to reflect something internal, then maybe this one is what Pomni thinks she could have been. Like if she hadn't clicked on that weird link or whatever happened and joined the circus, maybe she would have been powerful, respected, someone who actually had control. And now Kane's just dangling that version of her in front of her, like, look what you gave up, look what you could have had. Which is honestly kind of evil, even if it's not intentional, cause yeah, it would destroy her. And then there's Zooble, who I'm also kind of concerned about, because we already know that they hate adventures, and if they had the opportunity, they just not go at all. So the fact that we're seeing them show up in multiple locations, including that mafia-style bar, where they're apparently the bartender now, could be a bad sign. Because that means they are not just refusing to participate anymore, they are stuck just like the others, being dragged from one chaotic adventure to another without any say in it. But what's even more interesting is that later we see them in the total empty space, just them, Kane and Bubble, and it kinda looks like the void, which makes me think that Zooble finally broke down mid-adventure and Kane just pulled them out entirely, either as a punishment or maybe just to get them out of his way. And it's kind of weird because Kane used to get annoyed with Zooble, sure, but he at least tried to make the adventures kind of tolerable, and now he's just getting them out into the void. Like, I don't even know what Kane wants anymore. But it seems like that if Kane is starting to glitch so hard that he's not even pretending to care anymore, then something really bad is coming. And not just for Zooble, but for everyone. And what really gets me though is that we're not just watching the characters suffer in separate little chunks anymore. They are starting to overlap. Like the trailer shows Jax and Pomni together a lot. They even show up at the bar scene together looking completely exhausted, like they've both just had the worst days of their lives. And I honestly think that's where Jax might actually try to talk to her again. Because he already kind of tried back in episode 4 and Pomni didn't really give him anything. But now that they've been through whatever this episode turns out to be, maybe he thinks she'll actually listen. Or maybe he just doesn't have anyone else left who doesn't hate him. Which then ties back to the Ragatha stuff, because oh my god, if that scene at the circus grounds is really the three of them, Pomni, Jax and Ragatha, having some kind of confrontation, then yeah, that's gonna go interestingly. So yeah, it's not just one silly setup after another this time, because every new location feels like it's tightening the screws a little more, pushing the characters further out of their comfort zones and dragging up stuff they've been trying so hard not to deal with. And by the end of it, I don't think it's just the glitching that's gonna be irreversible. I think something in their dynamic is gonna break and it's not getting put back together.